this video, I'm going to show you how to make a pleated skirt for Pear Smart Doll by just using the waist measurement, the length of the skirt, and then figuring out how many pleats I can fit into the skirt and how to mark the pleats on the skirt. I'm going to use my Smart Doll as a model for making the pleated skirt. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to need my measurements of the waist, how big I want the skirt to be. So I'm going to measure around, not on the real waist. I want it to sit on the hip a little bit. So that's going to be 11 and a half for me, 11 and a half inches. You want it to be, measure from where you want the skirt to hang to how short you want it to be or how long. So I want to make it about 4 and a half. So I'm going to leave make it 5 inches to allow for the hem allowance. So for the pleats, each pleat is going to take up 2 inches. And this is the way I figured out how much I need for the pleats. Is you figure in the face of the pleat plus what you're going to fold underneath each pleat, and that total will be how much you need for each pleat. And in my case, it came up to 2 inches. I cut out my piece of fabric, the total length that I need. This is my seam allowance, and then I mark a line from the seam allowance to the first pleat, and then from there to the fold. So I'm marking one line that's about 3/4 of an inch, and then the other line that's double that, and I keep doing that, the 3/4, the double, the 3/4, the double. So that way I'm making my pleat to that line, make my pleat to the next line, make my pleat to the next line, and so on and so forth. Before I pin my pleats, I'm gonna go ahead and sew my hem, just because it's gonna be easier. It'll make it nice and square, and then I'll pleat it. I pleated my entire panel after sewing the hem. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a basting stitch all the way across the top here. The fabric is now basted at the top and nicely pressed. And now I'm going to go ahead and make the waistband. And I'm going to make the waistband about 1/2 inch wide. So I'll cut it. I'll cut a little a rectangle 2.5 inches wide to allow for the seam allowance and the fold over. And then for the side seams, also add 1/2 inch on each side. So for this one, I believe it was 11 inches, more or less. 11 and a half inches. So I'm going to make my waistband 2.5 inch rectangle by 12 inches. I'm going to do 12.5 inch just to make sure that I have enough for the overlap. Another option for the waistband, if you don't want to reinvent the wheel, is take one of Danny's patterns. I'm using the waistband for the cargo pants, and I'm shortening it to the length that I want. On the waistband, to 12 inches from the top, and then this will be the front center and the side overlap. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it. Make sure that this is parallel. If you're using the waistband on Danny's pattern, make sure you follow the grain line so it lays well. I just made it a little extra longer just in case. And I'm going to first sew along the top here, this seam. Then I'll open it up and serge the facing side of the seam along the end, and then I'll attach it. So here's the waistband. The facing is serged, and I also did some understitching towards the facing side so that it folds nicely. And then I'm going to try it on the doll, since I kind of didn't measure it exactly for the final length. So now I'm going to go ahead and pin my skirts right sides to right sides, and this is going to come over like this. So on this side, I'm going to fold it under as if it were right against the pleat, and then start here where you made your mark, start pinning. Pin all the way to the end. And on this side, I'm just going to shift it over just a little bit. And I'm actually going to serge this and match it with this end of the skirt. So I attached the waistband to the skirt, and I went a little bit, I should have done my serge line a little bit closer here, so it extends a little bit more, but that's okay. And now I'm going to trim that seam to about 1/8 of an inch. You don't need to clip. Trimming it should be sufficient. The fabric is on the correct grain. It should accommodate. So now that's our waistline. And all that's left to do is first I'm going to remove the basting stitches, and then fold your waistband, and I'm going to sew it along 1/4 of an inch, leaving an extension there. Now I've sewn this edge, and I folded, I don't know if you can see it, but I folded this part up And then I'm gonna trim the corner. Then I'm gonna turn it over, flip it around. And make sure you push this seam in. And then fold this over the seam. And of course you have to make your pull the corner out. So that's going to be folded over a little bit like that. Just so it doesn't show on the other side. And then I'm going to pin it. And while it's flat, I'm going to pin this all the way around. And just in the front stitch, right in the ditch, which is the, right in that seam line right there. And here we go, the waistband is attached and stitched in the ditch. This is how the closing end should look. And the final step is to close the back. So what I'll do is match my seams. See how it overlaps? So that you can't even see where the closing starts. The pleats are even on both sides. So I'll match them like that. And pin. And I sort of can see the fold, so that's how, that's going to be my seam line. And leave an opening of about, I would say 2 inches, just enough so that the skirt can fit over the hips easily. In this case it does. So I'm going to go ahead and close that seam in the back. Up to here. Now that you've sewn your side seam, or your back seam I should say, press it again, that back part anyway, and then your skirt is ready. Let's try it on one last time before I put the snap in. And that's how it should look. I love the way it turned out. I'm gonna give it a good press again. Make sure all my pleats are nice and set. And you can always adjust your pleats so they don't stick up in the back. Just because her rump is a little bit bigger. or you can leave it the way it is. And I'll just press it really good. Put the snap on. And I'll be all set. Came out a little bit longer than I wanted it. So you can always adjust your skirt length to whatever skirt length you want. And this, I'm making this one for the Pear doll because there's no pattern, no free pattern for the for this skirt. And then you can just make a top and embellish to your heart's content.